are vengeance. Oh, yeah. Hi, sorry. Gotta get out of the mood here. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Tales from the Film Set. I'm your pseudo host, Ryan O'Regan, along with JT McGuire right next to me. Robert and Scott are busy doing actual acting work at the moment, so they'll go ahead and join us next week. But today, we are your Ryan and Big O, or JT and Big O, or whatever kind of situation. Are we going to go with JT Big O? Yeah, we'll stick with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so JT and Big O here on Spanglish New Sports World Network on Zingo Channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app on the app stores for iOS or Android devices. When you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. This way we know that it's doing right for you. And of course, both apps are free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, and Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and on all smart TVs 2016 and newer. So, as you could probably guess from my very moody attire, we are going to be spoiling The Batman that just came out this past weekend. Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz, all that good stuff. And I understand there may be some people that maybe haven't seen the movie yet. I don't know what you're waiting for. Made 138 million just in the U.S. alone, so obviously some people seen it. But we're also going to be talking about some other superhero fare that's going to be coming out, like Guardians of Justice that also premiered recently. And boy, when you compare that to the Batman, it's apples and oranges, real apples and oranges there. I'm guessing you haven't seen this, right, JT?
No, I haven't seen Guardians of Justice yet. In fact, I think you sent me a message earlier saying it's better if I didn't see it yet.
Yeah, so we're going to hold off on the Batman stuff for just a quick second since we're talking about that right now.
Well,
and the memes plenty will come through. So I want to go ahead and give you all some time to actually enjoy the
but
show.
So yeah, we had a little snafu here, but I was actually trying to ask for this image up because how you started this. Actually, I do. Let's just jump right into Batman. Let's be honest. That's what anyone watching our show tonight wants to hear us talking about Batman. And when you came in saying, "I'm vengeance," throughout the entire film, that's what he called himself. That's what everyone else called him. Like, other than the Riddler, no one called him Batman. Everyone called him Vengeance. And every time they called him Vengeance, I just thought of this meme of them going, "Who's that? That's Vengeance."
Yeah, no, that's definitely one of those. It's obviously going to be memorable for the movie, but it's also going to be one of those things that's going to get memed 3 ways to Sunday, like. And plus, it's kind of like I don't want to necessarily say like a bit of an Easter egg if anybody's actually ever gone ahead and watched the animated series, because really that's the only other time I ever heard vengeance being utilized in that way. If anyone remembers the old animated series, it's like there's that whole thing, I guess, like in one of the first episodes where he goes, "I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman." And
So
that's it. That's the only other time I've ever heard it.
And how old is the director for this film? Because is he our age where he probably grew up watching that?
Matt Reeves?
Yeah.
I think he would probably be around in that era. Because also don't forget, this is like something that's like a little bit more grounded in other things. But yeah, as far as Matt Reeves is concerned, I'll go ahead and bring him up. But he definitely wanted to keep it a little bit more grounded, a little more down to earth, more so than Nolan, which is surprising when you think about it.
This film was more down to earth.
Yeah,
this film was more down to earth. I saw something about that too. Like, this is a film
being a regular guy. I mean, you have to admit, this is definitely a more dressed down Batman than we've gotten in other iterations.
This is a more dressed down Batman. He looked like he was wearing his finest cape with the collar up and everything.
Well, look, okay, he doesn't have like all the money in the world to create all of his stuff. He's pretty much down there like a grease monkey, tooling around, making all of his things without having Lucius Fox go ahead and like just, oh, here, we have it in R&D. Just take it.
You're making assumptions.
Right, right. But he's not throwing around like the bat credit card or ice
No.
skates in the boots or a plane or a boat or any of those other gimmicks that we've seen in other iterations. This is the poorest Batman that we've probably seen.
I disagree with you on that. To be honest with you, I don't think they showed enough of this character to really say anything really about him. But the fact that his father had enough money to give out $1 billion. By the way, we should point out that we did before, but this is a spoiler review of the Batman. We're gonna
Yeah, there's
go
spoiler. We're just gonna be yelling it all the time while we're doing this, so this
spoiler,
way you're
spoiler,
aware.
spoiler. We're gonna go very in depth with the film here, as we are Tales from the Film Set. And we are filmmakers. We're gonna be talking about the story, the characters, and just a breakdown of not only
What
what we
worked
thought of the
within.
film, of all the little areas of it. So I guess right now we're arguing about the story itself and the realism of it. And quite frankly, I thought it was an in between the Tim Burton and the Nolan. It was a little more grounded than Tim Burton, but it was still a little more fantastical than I think. Uh, just to make sure I said this right, it's not. Now I forget. Did I say Nolan or Burton? Wow, I'm getting confused. I'm confusing myself now. I didn't think it was as out there as Burton's Batman, but I didn't think it was as grounded as Nolan's Batman. Nolan's felt like very realistic. Went into depth of how Bruce Wayne became Batman, getting the training, learning everything that he's doing. It's how he got all his equipment. It all kind of made sense up until Dark Knight Rises. But I feel like it didn't go into detail like how he got all the equipment he has. Obviously, Bruce Wayne didn't build contact lenses that with little cameras in them, or most of the other stuff they probably had there.
I would admit the eyes, the contact lenses, those were kind of tricky. Although if you look at the feed that it gave you, I mean that's not too surprising. It's not like it was in 4K HD either. Um, but I would disagree with you on that in that respect, only because we you're telling me that the League of Assassins with Ra's al Ghul wanting to just completely demolish um, Gotham City with an explosive on a train and nerve gas that gives you all your fears. That's more realistic than simply some orphan who maybe a little is clever, who has an online following, who's kind of techie with traps and such. Who basically he was Jigsaw from the Saw movies,
Mhm.
and all he had to do was do a couple of explosions, let the water in, and then have his goons take some people out with guns because they
It's
were his
still,
following.
it
That
still seemed it still seemed a little too fantastical in all the setup and all the ways that they did it. Like 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 just the way he's dressed, the way he acts, all the other characters around them, they didn't seem they were believable but still not real.
well, to be fair, none of this should ever be real, but I would say as far as really inciting fear and really the kind of stuff that would probably trouble some people in a society. No, no, I'm not doing the voice. I'm not doing the voice. But the kind of stuff that you would say could be an issue if someone went a little megalomaniacal, the Batman definitely feels the most possible. Like I could
Mm,
see some kook online, whether he's got like 507 Twitch followers or TikToks or whatever. Anyone who can actually galvanize the thoughts and start riling them up of people can have things arranged the way they want to. Yeah, fine, he didn't have a brand sponsorship, but he was still able to get away with a lot just because he fell under the radar and he knew how to utilize just modern technology. Nothing even crazy. He basically duct taped a phone to someone's hand and then just put an explosive device around the neck. Anyone with enough je ne sais quoi can go ahead and pull that off.
I didn't think I'd have to be debating with you about the realism of this film. If I did, I'd probably give it a little
That's how
more.
good it is, though. It's nothing too
But no,
fantastical, like
it's
you're saying.
not. It didn't feel real. It felt like I was going a little back to the Tim Burton ones. It didn't feel like the real world. Yes, the situations are something that we could face, but it wouldn't act out that way, I think, in real life.
No, it's hard to say. I mean, if you look at any of the stuff, any of these villains.
The dialogue, the way they went about the things, I think the
Oh
cops
yeah,
would
let's
have
let's
figured
get
out
on the writing
I
here
think the
because
cops would have figured out a lot of this stuff a lot faster than how it was implemented into this film.
oh yeah, don't get me wrong. There are definitely some plot holes throughout this movie, so it's not like this is an airtight film. Especially when you've got something that's going on for 3 hours, and it's like, wow, you're really filling in the time here. Like one of the things I found funniest, all the times that Batman would come out of the shadows. Now, you'll admit that in The Dark Knight, he's a little bit more ninja like. He's faster, he's using stealth, he's really jumping up, jumping down, grabbing people, that sort of stuff. Wouldn't you agree?
Uh
In the Dark Knight series.
I
Because
I feel like the way Nolan shot his, and by the way, I don't think Nolan's the greatest filmmaker of all time. The way his films were edited, it just like neck snapping.
right.
But
Well, we'll get
but
into
I
Nolan later, really,
but
but
Nolan still felt until he got again. I always preference with until he got to Dark Knight Rises because Dark Knight Rises is just bat crazy, and I can't say the S word, so that's why I had to kind of edit that there. But
spoilers for The
everything,
Dark Knight Rises too, just in case anyone's wondering.
but I mean, like, not saying Batman Begins was super realistic, but I could believe that a lot more than I could believe the Batman. And the same thing with the Dark Knight. The Dark Knight was so grounded. It's like everything about that, like even as was as out far fetched as some of that seemed, it's like I could believe all that stuff happening. With the Batman, it's and maybe I'm going more by the overall presentation as opposed to the story. Because the overall presentation, the cinematography, how it's shot, the costume designs, it didn't feel like it was in the real world watching this film. It was gritty. It it was it was down to earth in that sense, but it still just did not I did not feel real watching this.
I would say the environment of Gotham in itself was definitely toned down to a point where it's just like, okay, it's any city USA. I mean, you do have a couple of shots that make it feel a little bit more Gotham slash New York City, like in the early parts where you have like that juxtaposition where the two streets kind of split off and it looks like Times Square. I get those pieces, but there really wasn't anything outside of that that screamed Gotham. So I think because it really felt like any other city, that helps to the realism. But the point I was trying to make before with
I
Nolan's
should point
Batman
out,
being more.
not to stop you from your point. We do have someone in our chat,
Oh, sure,
Darius,
sure, 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 sure.
who's been trying. He sent 2 messages, and we've been kind of ignoring him. So I apologize. First thing he
Yes, it
wanted to
is
say
what happens
was
when Scott's not around. It's like I don't notice these things.
so the first thing he was
Darius.
saying is, "Hi guys, hope you enjoyed it. I love most the I need glasses.
I,
I love they
I'll
mostly
go ahead.
adapted
Hi
Long
guys.
Halloween and
Hope you
set
enjoyed
up
it.
Hush with his father, Edward Elliot, and Joker. I don't know if this didn't really feel like an adaptation of Long Halloween. When they first, I will admit, when they said Halloween at the beginning of the film, I was like, oh my god, they're going to go into Long Halloween. But remember, the Long Halloween was really about Two Face and what transformed him. This didn't really, I think, go into that. This was more I think a more original story, unless there's one I'm not thinking of.
I mean, it does. There are shades of year one, obviously, because this is so early in Bruce Wayne and Batman's
Mhm.
career. And I could see how people would probably think a little bit of the Long Halloween simply because of like the systematic kills. Like one after another after another. It wasn't like a big blanket attack until later on. But mind you, the events of this movie all happen within like a week. This is a single week from Halloween until November 6th.
Hmm.
Like that's insane. Like the fact that they got I'm staying home at work from work that day. That is just too much. But I could oh no, it's fine, it's fine. We like to apologize. It keeps us humble. But we also ended up saying they banking big on Matt Reeves. Also, just recently announced Arkham Asylum, possibly Catwoman and the Penguin HBO Max series all coming. I will say today they did say that the Arkham series has been put on hold by Matt Reeves, which I think might be a smart idea, simply because the way they were talking about the Arkham series before, it's like it was going to be like a horror series, and I don't know if you necessarily want to do that right off the bat, especially considering you only finally established Arkham this early. And we already know that you have Riddler in there, as well as, let's face it, this world's Joker is his neighbor. Um, but if you go ahead and you start splaying out the villains that soon before a second movie even comes out, then you're essentially just like giving up the golden goose. I would say hold off on the series until you go ahead and you have more opportunities to flesh out the characters you want to flesh out. Which, mind you, Reeves has already gone on to talk that he feels it's possible to get someone like Mister Freeze into this world. Which, anything would probably be better than the old Schwarzenegger version. But I would like to see how they really go about that, because I feel like as someone in the medical field, as Doctor Freeze was, if there's a way they can use Arkham more in a second movie than they did in this one, save it for the second movie. Don't just go ahead and throw it on television. Don't go ahead and throw it on HBO Max just to keep it going. And I think Reeves has enough artistic integrity to do that.
I think I want to kind of stick on to the Batman for now. I don't, because I honestly I don't know much about these new series that are being developed, and uh, I rather them focus more on a second film than try to break off into. Except maybe Catwoman. I mean, she went her own separate way at the end of the film, so that would be kind of interesting. But I'll
Oh,
be
what's
honest, I wasn't a fan of Gotham back in the day, so I definitely don't wanna I don't wanna go into a, Gotham Police Department series,
yeah?
personally.
Plus, we're already still have Pennyworth, I think, on Epics. I think
Ugh,
that show's still
mm.
going on too.
I don't know why I
So
went I never even saw that series. I just the way you started talking is like, "That sounds bad, I should agree with Ryan."
no,
Ugh,
no, I'm sure it's
ugh,
fine. It's
that
had more than one
series.
season, and just like the Batwoman. So I mean, there is enough property out there to go around. I don't think you need to go too crazy right off the bat just because the movie was a success. And mind you, it's only the first weekend. I mean, 138 domestically, I think 258 worldwide. It's not bad, especially considering what Spider-Man was able to pull off, and that's two movies in that was established. This was all new. Everything was riding on the fact that it was more Reeves' vision than it was Patterson or Zoe Kravitz or all the makeup that they put on Colin Farrell, which he was unrecognizable. I
I
like
don't wanna get to characters yet, I wanna go back to story real quick. So so beyond, the realism of the story, what did you think about the story overall?
I mean, there was definitely some elements that reminded me of other movies. Like when you look at how the Riddler was doing
Well,
things.
what would you say the story was good? Did it catch your attention? Was it a little too conjointed some places? Like, one thing I've
I
been
don't know
one
about the main story, but I think the underlining story is what grabbed me.
one thing that kinda happens to me as a filmmaker when I watch a film is I start breaking down certain things of the story. If you can lose me, if you can make me forget that I'm a filmmaker, or like I would do that shot differently or that shot differently, you have me. You have me into the story. But way too often I would complain to myself about like just a story choice that they would have in there, like why did you drag out this too long? Why did you rush so quickly through this? Just I felt there was a lot of bad choices, and like a little tweaks would have made it so much better.
Well, like for instance, like which one?
Um So right at the beginning, he's trying to decipher the code for the Riddler, and he goes back to the Batcave and he's talking with Alfred.
Hmm.
Well, that whole entire thing, then they got a little thing in here like, "Oh, your accountants are coming over and you have to talk to them because reasons." So, they're deciphering the code and suddenly they're out of nowhere, they're in the dining hall of Wayne Manor, and it's like, "Oh, you have to get dressed to talk to the accountants. By the way, I've still been working on deciphering this code and going into deciphering this code and blah, blah, blah." And then out of nowhere, they're back into the Batcave, no explanation. And it's just like, okay, I could see that like maybe this was an extended story that made no sense. So they just did some quick cuts, but they really should have reshot those scenes and just eliminated it altogether because the way they edited it, it took me and maybe that's more an editing complaint than a story complaint, but
Yeah, it doesn't
it
sound like
affected
the
the
way it
story
was
too.
chopped up. That might be it. But I mean, I didn't see too much wrong with that myself, simply because I think it was helping to establish that this was a Bruce Wayne that really didn't want to be part of the duality that became with being Bruce Wayne and Batman. He was just
But
full on
no,
Batman.
but from a moviegoer standpoint, it takes you out of it. It gets confusing. If you don't know what happened, then you're kinda like, what just happened? Why are we here? Why are we there? Why did we move from this?" And sometimes some people edit something like that, that it just flows very well and you don't notice. I don't think it was done well here. And the opposite with the near the ending, where they had a perfect out where Batman beats all the shooters and everything, and then they can kinda end the film there. But Matt Reeves seemed to really wanna do this play where, like, Batman says, "Well, I'm not a real I can't be just a scary person. I have to be hope for the city too." So he kinda jammed in this other big long scene where he saves all the people in the water and, like, cuts the electricity, and then he falls into the water, and then he gets out of that, and he, like, rips all this free and shows this long shot of him leading people out, and it's like, it's a pretty shot, but it's dragging, and it didn't need to be there. And if you didn't
Mm,
have to put and the only reason you had to stick that in is so you could get the ending you wanted. I didn't like it.
See, again, I didn't mind that because throughout the whole movie, you're being shown that Bruce Wayne, Batman, is just this dark, scary figure. All he wants to do is like fight crime, and that's it. He just wants to punch people and get them off the streets. And he's fine with that because he's still new to it. But
But the
this
story
whole
has
event with
I'm not even talking about Batman the character, just the story itself. It has to flow. When you
right,
watch
but
a
what was
story,
the
when
point
you
of
read
this
a
story?
story, when you listen to a story, it has to flow because when you break it at some point, whether it's a super slow moment or a really sudden moment and you lose the audience, you might not get them back. And that's where I'm going. I'm watching this and I'm like editing it in my head where I'm like, they shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have done that. There was another cool scene, like, where, they show off the Batmobile for the first time. Like, he revs up
Hmm.
the engine and stuff, and Penguin has to jump in his car to run away, and I'm like, the way they set that up where it's like Penguin's just kinda sitting there in the water, and there was no reason for Batman to get into his car at that point. He's still fighting them on the streets. No one is in the car, no one is running away, but Batman has decided he's gonna get into his car and he's gonna just start revving the engine. And it's like, why don't the villains just at that point run back into the building where the car can't go?
Because they're scared. They hear
Yeah,
the roar, they see the lights. It's like,
no, it doesn't make sense. It was a cool scene, but it didn't make sense. Again, that's the point to try to say is again, maybe I'm saying story, maybe that's not quite story, but it affects the story. The way you edit it, the way you frame it, the way when you set up certain things, it affects the story.
understandable. But also, don't forget, this is a man who was given 3 hours to play around with the movie. Do you really think there was much that he did that he was going to end up on the cutting room floor? I think it's even been put on record that there is no Reeves cut for this film, so there isn't like a longer version. There isn't like that much that's been
I
edited
don't want
out
to
that
see a longer
warrants it.
version.
So it is what it is.
I hate when filmmakers make certain choices that, like, just you got to think better about this. Like, I have made. I hate it when I say I made films because my films are not the level of a Matt Reeves film.
No, of
But at the
course not.
same
Well, we've never had the budget to do something. If we did,
but at the same
uh,
time, I've edited enough films and I've made sure I've shot stuff that I went, oh, that's a really cool scene. Oh, that's something I really want to show off. And as I'm editing, I'm going, it makes absolutely no sense why I would have this in my film. And I've cut stuff from a film that I wanted to be there, but I just knew it would make it a worse film if I did. And then with this one, it's just like I wouldn't have made some of the choices in the scenes that he kept and some of the ways in which he shot or presented his characters.
right. Well, I mean, far be it from me to say that the movie is perfect in its 3 hour runtime. Certainly, I do feel that you could have at least taken off a good half hour on this film, and it would have been just as punchy. I would have even said, instead of necessarily cutting some of the stuff, just speed up some of the stuff so that this way we can get through it quicker. Every time he's coming out of the shadows and walking like he's, the Undertaker coming down to the ring, it doesn't have to be that dramatic every single time he
I
shows
was
himself.
actually I was kind of fine with those scenes. I don't think any of them were so slow that I couldn't stand it. Again, it's like like you talking about speed up. I think Ghostbusters had this same issue, Ghostbusters Afterlife, where the scenes that dragged, they kept in there, and this when you get to the action scenes, like, yeah, it's like cut, cut, cut. Like, wow, that was really fast. How did we already get here? That we should have built to this. It's it's kind of the
It's about
same,
attention span at that point.
yeah. But I started to say, like, I think it affects characters too. So I think we should take this time probably to go more into the characters of the film.
Uh,
What did you think about characters as well as the casting of them?
Personally, Zoe Kravitz is like top tier Catwoman. Like,
Mhm,
this is definitely a Catwoman, and that's why I say year one, because the characterization of Selena Kyle in this film is much more attuned to the variation that she had in that early days, where she was just kind of working the club, the seediness, just trying to make her way before she really became like a criminal. So it was just as much an origin story for her as it was for like early Batman days. And
mhm.
Zoe just really had that appeal. Like, she could be vicious, but she always had like that look in her eyes where it's like, are you gonna kiss me or are you gonna kill me? I don't know which. And that's really what you need from a Catwoman. Ever since the early days that we saw them back with like Julie Newmar and Eartha Kitt, that's the kind of Catwoman that you're supposed to have. Not necessarily someone who's like, maybe a little too erratic, like we got with Michelle Pfeiffer, but also not someone that's just like cold
Bland.
blooded, like you kind of got with Anne Hathaway in The Dark Knight Rises. Because I mean, her amount of like attitude and appeal was just like kind of dead. There's nothing
Yeah.
memorable about that version, but this version, every time she went ahead and stepped up to Batman and they were like locking eyes and they were close, you could feel there was an energy coming off of that. Like, that is like true Batman Catwoman like energy between the two of them.
I have something to say about that too. But I will with Zoe Kravitz, I don't know if I'm gonna regret saying this later, but I would say she would be a definitive Catwoman. I think she did very well in this role, and I did really like her presentation and how the character was treated and how she acted as this character in the film.
Yeah, I'm glad you like her because there were some people that didn't back in the day. And then that really makes it funny considering she did audition for that Dark Knight Rises and was told she was too urban for the Nolan version, which I
That's
would dare say maybe you could have used a little more urban in the Nolan version.
something
But
I need to say. Like, Zoe Kravitz is the daughter of Lenny Kravitz, correct?
yes,
Would you dare tell the daughter of Lenny Kravitz that she's too urban for any movie role? Would you dare?
I personally wouldn't, but
Like,
then again,
I
Lenny
want to
Kravitz in
know the
himself, I
person who
mean,
told did
transcends.
unless it was Nolan himself coming there and saying something like that. Like, I don't understand that at all.
I don't either because really, when you think about it, there Catwoman isn't something that should be necessarily defined by background or ethnicity.
No.
It's pretty much more of the question of whether or not she can be appealing and yet dangerous. That's the basis of who the
Yeah.
character is. Can they entice you? Can they catch you off guard? Can they be the catnip that you need? And
The
then just as
catnip.
quickly scratch you, catch you, and throw you off a building.
I think the only complaint I would have had about Zoe Kravitz being Catwoman for the Dark Knight Rises is she was 22, 23 at the time. And so she seems like she may have been a little too young for the role at the time, in my opinion. But outside that, probably not.
Yeah, no, I mean, I will say that definitely her backstory, her character backstory in this, definitely gets a little bit more mired because if I remember correctly, I don't know how deep her mob ties go, but considering her connection to the Falcone family and all that, it's like, yeah, that seemed a little forced, but I get it.
Yeah. I think there's little things that they tweak over time. And with this film, they tweaked obviously Catwoman, so she was related to the Falcone, and also how the Penguin is so all of a sudden the second to the mob in this.
Well, I mean, that you can kind of understand because, I mean, aside from the Danny DeVito version, which we just saw, was like, okay, he governed clowns. Um,
But in more recent times, in both the comics, the animated series,
the
even
Gotham
I
TV
think,
series,
yeah, I think he was more being he was being portrayed more as a corrupt politician. In this case, he's just a full blown member of the mob.
right? And I dare say he's probably the comedic relief of the movie compared to everyone involved.
If there was a comic relief in the film, then yeah, he'd be the closest to it.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously you're not going to this movie for chuckles, but I'd say certainly the anytime you would get a laugh or anytime that you would be like, ha, ha, that's funny, it would be something that he said. Even when he was all like ganged up and everything, and he was walking out, and they had him waddling.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
But well, he was always kind of a joke to a certain degree. But I have to say I don't know if it's the makeup or the acting, but Colin Farrell in that role is I thought he did a really good job.
See, this is the part that gets me, just because as a thicker actor, again, I could have seen a look like what Farrell had, and be like, there are plenty of actors, they're probably big name actors, that could legitimately and literally filled that role better than putting like the suit and everything around Colin Farrell and muffing up his pretty face. Even though he is a good Irish boy, so as an Irishman, I can stay with him. But outside of that, it's just like, mm, I don't know.
As a fellow fat man, maybe not an actor, but a fellow fat man.
Oh,
Are
by the
you
way, Darius,
really?
thank you. Yes, he is the daughter of Long Halloween. So another Long Halloween connection.
I didn't
Really,
realize
Matt
that.
Reeves cherry picked what he had to for this movie.
So I was gonna say you're fighting for diversity of fat men.
Yeah, always, always, man. It's like I don't know when I'm going to lose all this if I'm ever going to lose it before my dying day. So I've got to do what I can for people like me.
I wish I shouldn't even bring it up because I don't know the name, but I know there was another film or TV show recently where they had like a skinny or good looking actor and they just uglied him up and
This
made
is
him.
us.
Oh, This Is Us. What
Anytime
was?
someone brings it up, that's like the big thing. This is us. Because
I don't
the
know
guy
much
the,
about
the
it.
guy they played up against Chrissy Metz, there was a skinny guy in a fat suit until they actually had him lose weight in the show.
No, I don't think it was that. It was something else. But there was something else where they put someone in heavy makeup and it's like, was a famous good-looking actor, but it's like, no, we're gonna make him look totally different because we just wanted that name in our film. But
Well, it's
again, like I
not Eddie
said,
Murphy and Norbit or what's his face in Big Mama's house,
no, it
Martin
is a more
Lawrence.
recent one.
No,
But
not
like
Martin
I said,
Lawrence. Yeah.
now outside of that, I don't know if I'm not saying he was a bad actor. I'm not saying he played the role of Batman. Well, maybe I am.
But
Robert
yeah,
Patterson.
just go ahead and say it.
I didn't hate Robert Patterson's performance, but I think talking about body types and stuff, he looks too young to play Batman. I know he's not young. He's in his, I think, mid to late 30s at this point, but he looks more like he's someone to play a Nightwing than he is Batman.
Which is funny because when you consider the timeline in the movie, the events that we see take place 20 years after the Waynes have been shot, which means if he's canonically usually Bruce Wayne is 8 years old when the parents get shot, he's supposed to be 28 in that movie.
Mhm.
And with the emo impression that he gives off, it's hard not to see him as maybe a little bit more gaunt or a little bit more frail than you would expect Batman to be. But again, this is early Batman. We have never really seen a Batman who's only in his like second year on film. We've seen it animated, but never in film. So
Batman Begins.
ah,
That was year 1.
I don't know if I would
Yeah,
necessarily say that
it
Christian Bale was
was.
thinner. I mean, he can get thinner, yes, but Christian Bale also had all that training, and he was like ripped from the League of Assassins stuff. This is a
Yeah,
bad man, Robert
Batman.
Pattinson, that was only trained by Alfred. We didn't see anything about going off and training with magicians and ninjas and stuff like that. For all we know, all he knows is a good little rough and pummel from the former English Secret Service agent.
So this goes into a topic that I'm not sure I should attack or anything like that. But we're now going into like how far can you go away from the character that you know? When you take a very popular character that everyone recognizes, you have to kind of break them down to the core elements because when you make a new film, you have to decide what new things do I bring to it and what things do I have to keep. Otherwise, people will be annoyed at me. And I think
Okay.
Batman, because Batman's been around for so long at this point, I think there's definitive things about Batman, like especially after the '89 film, like and the cartoon series. Like he is well trained, he is very smart. He is like always one step above everyone else. So to have a Batman who is more the kid hero trying to learn, I don't know how more accepted he is. Like if this was a Daredevil like character or a Spider-Man like character, or like I said, a Nightwing, I think this would be more accepted. But a very inexperienced, very young Batman, it's kind of weird to watch. It doesn't feel like Batman.
Right, and I can see the point there, especially when you brought up Daredevil, because there was a lot about the first like hour of seeing Batman do his thing. It really reminded me of the Netflix Daredevil series with Charlie Cox.
Mhm.
One could even say that the fact that he made his own suit and everything, and even just the headpiece. You take
Can
those
I
ears
point
off the
out
headpiece, it
there's
might as
no
well be the
proof that
bandana.
he made that suit?
Yeah, yeah.
You keep going into he made this, he made that. We didn't see who made. We could very easily say that Tim Burton's Batman made everything that he used. Like you could be like Michael Keane out there banging together that long ass Batmobile. It's it's the same thing. We don't
Possibly.
know.
No, yes, we don't know, so we have to dispel our disbelief in everything that could happen and did happen. Yes, I realize there's a separation there, but the fact of the matter is, from what we saw, this was kind of like a DIY Batman in a sense. He wasn't up to the grade of the detective that he has been known to be in the comics. He was starting to get there, but he still needed Alfred's help in a lot of the deciphering of things, and he
But that's another
still
thing
came up
too.
short when it came to the end.
You said that he was only trained by Alfred. Now, I don't think that was proven fact in the film either. He didn't say like,
He
"Oh, oh."
he did, Alfred did mention how he used to train him how to fight, and since we don't really see much more of that, and we don't see too much acrobatics, entitled to believe that this was like a sheltered kid Batman who just learned everything while in house, which is why he's all pale. And Alfred pretty much was like not his father, like he wants to go ahead and tell him, "You're not my dad," but that's all he's had.
But again, it's I think that's more assumption to the story, which again, that's the weakness of the story too.
Right.
Um,
You can fill in the gaps if you want to until there's a second movie made.
right.
But that's what happens when you take an adaptation and you're taking elements from all these different stories and you're piecemealing it together. So this is his own creation, certainly. But as far as not Battison, I'll call him Battison.
Yeah. I
As
think I
far as
called him Patterson. I
yeah,
apologize.
Battison. As far as Battison is concerned, I didn't mind it. I think that as far as this particular version, this vision, it fit for what they were trying to do. Now, someone who didn't really fit and just really I was kind of off on the whole time was the Riddler. Um, Paul Dano, as great of an actor as he is, love him in Swiss Army Man and a whole bunch of different movies, but this Riddler just really did not feel like Riddler. And then, like you said, you go ahead and you strip down certain elements and everything. You take away the full body green outfit that makes him look like a hazmat worker, and you take away the question mark, and it's Jigsaw. It's Jigsaw. That's all this is. That Riddler goes ahead and writes a couple of trick letters, and just like he's not as smart as I would have hoped the cleverest person in Gotham City to be.
Well, that's another thing too, and I think Sherlock Holmes' Book of Shadows had the same issue. When you're trying to write so clever that you start sounding dumb, and I think that comes here too because they're like, "Oh, look how clever the Batman is. Look how clever the Riddler is coming up with all this stuff." It's like it's too much. It's trying to be too clever. Like, "Oh, if you pull away all these deciphers, it's going to spell the word drive." Like, what? No.
Yeah,
Or
and I'm sorry, we have to talk about, if nothing else, this is the final bit I'm going to go into, but you're telling me that Riddler was so smart that he was able to, arrange all these different killings and he was able to lead Batman down this track as if he was going to help him with his master plan. And he was able to arrange 500 some odd people to follow him online and do as his will at the very end of the movie with the climactic flooding of Gotham and the almost assassination of people in that auditorium, which, mind you, there was not 500 people. He was lucky if he got 20 up there. But, and yet, with all the cork boards and red strings and everything that you don't know that Bruce Wayne is Batman.
exactly. Like
That's the part that escapes you.
even Bruce Wayne is like, I'm pretty confident he figured out who I am. And then he's like, "Oh no, not him, not him." And you're just like, are they gonna say like, well, he was so wrapped up in liking Batman and hating Bruce Wayne that he couldn't see that they were the same person? It's just yeah, again, yeah, it's ridiculous. It's the one staring you right in the face, and that's the one you couldn't figure out.
I dare say the guy that they have for Joker, Barry Keogh, I feel like his character may have had a little bit more of an idea about Batman and Bruce Wayne whenever they punched him around and they take off the mask and it's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "I'm vengeance," almost like playing off of what Batman said. He almost feels more in Batman's head than the Riddler does, and all he
Yeah,
did was get the crap kicked out of him.
it's because I think to try to make this Riddler more interesting, they were incorporating elements of the Joker, the chaos, the mad lunatic schemes. It's like that's Joker's bit. That's why you use Joker for that, not the Riddler.
Yeah, even I hate to say it, but even killing. Riddler was never the biggest into killing. He was always just trying to prove that he was smarter than everybody else. He was
Right.
more of like a he'll rob a bank kind of criminal than a murder somebody kind of criminal. So just the fact that they made Riddler a little bit more off-hinged and gritty, but in doing so, you make him less like the Riddler.
Right. It's like they wanted to use the Joker, but the Joker's so overused. Like, we'll just use the Riddler instead.
Right, and again, probably like they did with the Dark Knight series, they'll save him for the second movie since they already introduced him a little bit, but they'll flesh him out once they actually get him out of Arkham.
I didn't think it was a good idea to start hinting at the Joker at the end of this film. Like maybe a hint here and there, but the way they did it here, where they literally already had an actor in his place talking. I hated that laugh. That Joker laugh was one of the worst Joker laughs I've ever heard.
Well, it
Um,
almost becomes like Spider-Man 3 in that sense, where it's like you almost have like too many villains at once. It's like you
yeah,
already established a Penguin, you already established a Riddler who survived. Selena Kyle Catwoman is a little bit of an anti-hero because she would rather have killed Falcone if she was given the chance. So I mean, she's a little on the fringe. And then you throw in a Joker just in like the last 15 minutes.
yeah, and you hint that he might team up with the Riddler for a sequel.
Yeah,
Which
plus there's
no,
other
I
villains
no.
that were hinted to that weren't just like given an actual physical member, like Hush. I think
Yeah,
Hush on screen would
as
be good.
Darius mentioned. So
Yeah, that would
we've
be
never
actually
seen
pretty
Hush.
cool because we've never seen a Hush live action from what we've seen on television. But I wouldn't
Mhm.
mind seeing that in a movie. That's the thing. The minute you start doing too much in a superhero movie, you almost start parodying yourself. And I want Reeves to be cognizant of that. Maybe that's why he's holding back on some of the television show stuff. Because maybe now that you see what works and what doesn't, and what fans have liked and what critics have liked, and all that, you can now narrow your vision and fine tune it for the next thing before you start like, going off the rails with power.
I think he's already gone off the rails with this. Um,
uh, well, but
again,
that's yeah.
how I was starting to say this before. I don't know if I finished my thought. Uh, when I watch a film now, I judge it on this scale. Do I want to watch it again? Like, because as a filmmaker, I could look at this and go, I like this, I like this, I like this. This was a really cool scene. It was really cool when they did this. But to sit there from the beginning to the end, do I ever want to do this again? Not really. I do for The Dark Knight, I do for Batman Begins, I do for the original Batman, and probably I would even say Batman Returns, but for the Batman here, for everything good, it's not enough that I would wanna sit 2.5 hours through it ever again.
See, I can understand that kind of leveling. For me, it's a little bit different. For me to want to think about a movie again or to even consider watching it again, repeat viewing, it's not so much about just the overall experience. It's like, was there at least something memorable about the movie? Like, is this something that when someone brings up the Batman, are there going to be certain visions that come into my head and be like, yes, I like that part, I like that part, I like that part. Even if there another opportunity doesn't come along anytime soon for me to watch it again, will I remember it? And I can
Mhm.
say I will remember the Batman. I'll remember that car scene, the chase with Penguin. I will remember the electricity between him, and Catwoman. There are certain elements that will definitely stand out as far as making the movie something that stands out in my mind.
Yes, but in Batman and Robin, I can remember they had a Bat credit card. I can remember when, Mr. Freeze said to chill out. I can remember when, Silverstone came in and said, "Alfred, I'm your granddaughter," or something like that. It's moments are moments. You can remember good moments and bad moments, but the overall, because I think that's what truly counts for, a 90-minute film to a 3-hour film. Is it something you like so much that you would ever wanna see it again? Like, and we only have a few minutes left, but, the Shawshank Redemption, which it took me 10 years to sit down and watch that, and once I watched it once, I wanted to watch it over and over and over again, and I think that's like a 2.5-hour film. That was a long film, but I enjoyed it that much that I liked watching it over and over and learning something new every time I watched it.
Well, see, to your point though, I would watch Batman and Robin again too, but for different reasons. Because those memories that you just mentioned that were god awful also adds to the camp and the ridiculousness of the movie. It's kind of like it's so bad it's good. And that's what would make me want to watch something again. The fact that if I remember those things that stick out in my mind, it brings about a certain emotion. It either makes me want to laugh, whether it's intentional, or it makes me want to be like, oh yeah, that was so good. It looked so good. I felt something. Now, compare that to something like, say, The Dark Knight Rises. Not that much memory hits from that. Even Batman Begins, I would say, there's not a lot of memory on that. I think as far as Batman Begins, like you said, the League of Assassins stuff and then the stuff with the train, that's it. Not enough for me to want to go ahead and revisit the movie on a whim. But the Batman, there's enough there that I could be like, I'd have to settle in. I'd have to go ahead and get like a 5 hour energy and take that before I watch it. Absolutely. But I would watch it. And hopefully there's, a quicker cut next time.
So we only have around 2 minutes left. Obviously, we're
Wow, we
not.
really talked that long about this.
I take it back. We have 1 minute left. Thank you, Eduardo. So 1 minute left. Obviously, we can't touch Guardians. Actually, we can't do anything. We're probably gonna have to just start wrapping it up. So
But
yeah,
that's how good this movie was. We were able to talk about it for a whole hour and we didn't realize.
I'm not gonna say that point. Okay, you have to start giving. You have to give our outro here, sir.
Okay, yeah. So again, this has been Tales from the Film Set. Again, find us on the Spanglish Sports Network, channel 250 on Zingo TV. Again, find us the app on iOS and Android devices, and of course, Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire Sticks, Roku sticks, and Dell televisions 2016 and newer. You can find us all the time, every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Scott and Robert will be back with us next week, and hopefully I won't have to worry about too much stress on my end. But as far as I'm concerned, the movie was great. As far as JT was concerned, needed work. Hopefully you can let us know in the comments what you thought of the Batman and if you would see it again yourselves. From JT McGuire and myself, Ryan O'Regan, we do bid you all a fond farewell and a good dark night.
From Spanglish World.